A special welcome to another wonderful time on the desk this beautiful evening. I'm so excited that we are all joined together on the desk this evening to talk about some very wonderful topics. I'm going to be cutting across one or two areas as it has to do with the state of the nation. And of course, we will look at the impact of some of the policies on the economy of the nation. It's no longer news that the economy of the nation has taken a different turn altogether from what a lot of people expected. And the impact, you can take that away? Not at all. My name is Ramsey Enoch Agbo, and of course, I have my guest on the desk tonight. Of course, he is a political economist, and he is so vast. And these are people that have studied the economy of the nation. Defolari Olamileko is right on the desk with me this beautiful evening. It's good to have you join us on the desk this evening, Olamileko.
Thanks for having me, and a very good evening to all our viewers out there.
All right, we're looking at the state of the nation and, of course, the impact of policies on the economy of Nigeria. How are you feeling? What's happening around you? How is the economy treating you? What's the difference between the now economy and the economy that we have before the emergence of this administration? All of that will be talked about this evening. But then, let's look at how policies affect the economy of nations. And we're starting from Nigeria.
Very interesting topic that you have brought for us to dissect this evening. And when you talk about policy, you're talking about a pre-post action of government, a pre-post statement of government, and a pre-post engagement of government, either for now or in future. So that's what policy can simply be interpreted to be. And when we talk about policy in the area of economy, we call it policy economics. What policy economics of government cut across three areas. We have fiscal policy, we have monetary policy, then we also have general social welfare development policy. But on the capture of these three kind of policies that I've made mention is the one that normally feel the impact, the people normally feel the impact. Generally talk about the social development policy of government, but the social development policy of government cannot come without the fiscal policy and the monetary policy. For instance, the monetary policy talks about the central bank of the nation, throwing out how money will be circulated and how much money can also be borrowed from the bank and how much savings can also be recovered through the banking sector. That's what the monetary policy deals with in the economy. Then the fiscal policy of the government deals with the area of taxes, and how government will make money, spend money, either through taxes, through tariff, and others. And the much money that government make is what now bring upon the general social economic development policy of government. Talk about electricity, education, welfare packages, and the rest of it. So these three aspects is where we can use to understand and weigh into the Nigerian policy economics, and also understand how government policy really affect, the general public, either you and I and others out there in Nigeria.
So what are the economic policies? What are the policies that are challenging to Nigeria right now? Let's look at some of the policies, all right, that have affected the economy of Nigeria as a nation today.
I think from what I said earlier, those policies cut across these three major policy sector area I've mentioned: fiscal policy, monetary policy, and the general welfare policy of the government. Now, the fiscal policy and monetary policy generate other policies, sub-policies that will now bring about the impact on the social and general welfare of the people. Now, from the monetary side, the CBN talk about interest rate, the CBN talk about fighting inflation, the CBN talk about the exchange rate. And if you look at what the government have done so far in this period, they've devalued the currency, they devalued Naira. Technically, it's now being exchanged at between 1,609 Naira at official rate and between 1,700, 1,720 at the black market rate. Then on the other side of the fiscal policy rate, they introduced several taxes they brought in onto the sphere of Nigeria economy. And with these two aspects of the policy, it affected the general welfare of the people. If you also remember the removal of subsidy, removal of subsidy is under fiscal policy. Our government will spend money, and government said they can't be spending money subsidizing fuel for Nigeria. So they remove it from that. So these two-string policy affected the general policy of Nigerians, talking about the provision of water, the provision of electricity, transportation, and the rest of it. So it affected us. So if you want to summarize the policy of the government, you only put it into one: monetary policy and fiscal policy. Then from these two, it comes down to the rest of the policy that government wants to initiate, either for education, for water, for electricity, and otherwise.
All right. Do we have pressing economic challenges in Nigeria as at today?
There are several, not just one, not two, not three. There are pressing economic policy that have become a challenge for Nigeria. First among them was the subsidy issue that government take away. It become an elephant in the house that become a big problem. And that kind of elephant in the house now generated some other problem like transportation costs, food price costs, and other costs that you can accrue underneath. But if you want us to now look at the main top of the policy challenge that we have in Nigeria, it falls back to implementation of other several policies that have been initiated in the past, which doesn't work, or supposed to work, but because of failure in implementation, those policies never work. And it brought about stagnant growth in the Nigerian economy. And the stagnant growth I'm talking about is not the growth of numbers, it is the growth and welfare of the people generally.
Have we had economic policies, or have we had policies that led to economic growth in Nigeria recently?
I think if we look at that, to understand the improvement of Nigerian economy is in two ways. There is official documentation that shows the paperwork of the economy is working. We are now at 2.7% growth. It was projected to be about 3.7% growth by IMF. Then the World Bank, IMF brought it down to about 3% growth or 2.7% growth recently after the IMF World Bank spring meeting. And the federal government growth target was about 3.7%. But these are paper working improvement of the economy. But when you now juxtapose this with the reality on ground, with the street connection of Nigerians who are working in the street of Abuja, Port Harcourt, Lagos, and compare the growth rate of the 3.7, 2.7 that government will be announcing, there's a lacuna, there's a big gap for you get it. So that's why when you now say, okay, which of the government policies that have worked? I will tell you, on paper it works, but in reality, it doesn't work.
In reality, it doesn't work. So how do we marry that? What do we do? What is the government supposed to do to make it work in reality? Because that of paper, no one cares. Because Nigerians are faced with the reality, okay, of the policies. As it is so challenging now, the dwindling nature of the economy. So what do you think the government should do for us to have it in real terms, not just on paper?
It's quite interesting that government have been trying as much as possible to make the policy work. It's just that so many incoherencies comes from the implementation stage. And sometimes some of those policies are not enough, are not deep-rooted, culturally deep-rooted to tackle the problem of the day. For instance, when President Tinubu came on board, he removed fuel subsidy, unified the exchange rate from 11 different platform exchange rate to 1, then we now have black market, which is quite good, and he reduced the gap between the official rate to the black market. On the other hand, he removed subsidy. Then he generated more money, he was giving state governors money, he was also having money for federal government. They were doing so many projects, they were doing road projects, they increased worker salary, minimum wage, they pay wage award for civil servants, and all these things were done. But the issue was that to transmit all those goodies down to the downtrodden, down to people that are not part and parcel of the tendency or threshold of government policy touching them, it becomes a challenge. And we must understand that in Nigeria, there are about 6 layers of classes. The classes of the political class, the economic class, who are members of the ruling class, are up. Then we have the upper class that are more or less like the senior people, like the lawyers, the accountants, the big ones, the bank owners. The second class. We also have the third layers of the classes, we also called the middle class or the middle income classes. Then we have the lower one that followed them. Then we have another one that followed after one, the lower class. Then we have the bottom of the bottom. Now, the challenge we have is that to get those strings of policy impact to come down from that ladder that I've just mentioned, from the pyramid of this political class, elite class, the economic class, down to the downtrodden, that's why we have an issue. By the time it gets to the middle class, it just stops there. It doesn't flow down to the lower middle class or the lower class or the downtrodden. And that's why we are having challenge. For example, federal government made money from subsidy, gave it to state government to go and implement some project in their state. The state government went, implemented some state project, but how many of those local governments in those states get those projects? They pay salaries to civil servants, they pay salaries to pay money to contractors. How many of those people are employed by contractors? So by the time you look at this, all this on a very level that we need to dissect why it is not working, you discover that it's not enough. But even the one that is being provided is not well scrutinized to ensure that the monitoring and evaluation of it to see whether it really touched the lives of the people is also missing. And that's why most time when government say they are doing ABC, the downtrodden out of the pyramid that we just mentioned don't get to see it, don't even get to know about it.
So what, because you just talked about the fact that sometimes the impact of this policies, it's been cushioned, but then it doesn't transcend to the average Nigerians to get a feeling of it.
Definitely.
Now, and that takes me to corruption, of course. So now, let's look at the issue of borrowing. As a matter of fact, the issue of borrowing. Does borrowing boost the economy of a nation?
For every economist, they will tell you that borrowing is not a bad idea. What is bad in borrowing when you borrowed and you don't put those money into projects that will bring back the money and also bring profit on the money so that you can pay back what you borrow. Then that project that you are using the money will continue to generate all that money for the state or for the government. But here in Nigeria, we borrowed. It's just that we are not talking about IMF. I think we had the opportunity to talk about IMF and World Bank at a point in time when I came to this station, and we are able to enumerate when you borrow from social project. Are you borrowing for a road project? Are you borrowing for social reformation? Because most times when you hear federal government borrow money, most of those money goes into two areas. One, infrastructural development or social re-engineering, like palliative and the rest of them. So how much of those palliative, just today there is a World Bank story that come out that Nigerians also secure about $370 million to also carry out some palliative and whatever. By the time that money is given to everybody, to state governor, to local government, you discover that it's not enough. Even though it could be enough, but it will not get to the right people at the right time that the money is needed.
Okay, all right. You're quite aware of the tax bill. As a matter of fact, all the bills have been passed already. All the bills have been passed. You're quite aware of that. Does that have the capacity to boost the economy of the nation, to bring us out of where we are, if not totally? To what extent?
I think we should understand what tax is all about. I'm not one of those economists that will tell you that the tax is coming to bring Eldorado to the economy. No, tax has its own principle, it has its own way of doing things. For the tax bill that has been just passed through the Senate, now going for harmonization with House of Assembly and the Senate, the tax is to revolutionize how government will be collecting those money. So when government collects money through a revolutionized, modernized way, the next thing is how we're going to use that money is the next question we'll be asking. Because the tax bill on its own, when it eventually passed, it doesn't have that impetus to say, okay, when you collect all the money, this is where you use the money. Its own power stop that you collect, the modernization of collection, and where you're going to collect when you finish collecting, where you're going to keep it. But talking about how it's going to impact the entire Nigerian economy, that's another ball game that the tax bill does not deal with. Although one of the aspects that we deal in terms of the economy is that it's bringing money out of people who are earning more than people who are earning less. If you understand what I'm saying, for the tax bill that's coming, people who are earning more money are going to be paying more. Where people who are not earning much will pay less tax. Those are the progressive aspects of the tax. And that's the only thing that is coming in terms of the economy aspect. But when you talk about the real impact that will bring on the economy, definitely it will bring more money. But how that money will be spent at the end of the day, the tax bill is not talking about that.
The tax bill is not even talking about. So the tax bill as it is now, it's not talking about how this money is going to be spent, but how this money is going to be collected. And there is this school of thought, there is this belief that it is the average Nigerians that pay taxes here in this country. I don't know how true that is. The reason is because as you're recharging, your little recharge of just 200 naira, there is a tax deduction.
Exactly.
You get to the restaurant, you get food to eat, there is a tax deduction. The little job you're doing, all right, irrespective of how much your salary is, you're paying tax. But then, this tax, you're not feeling the impact. Okay? So now, as it is, when you say the people who earn more will pay more and people who earn less will pay less, it's not clear. Can you give a clear, explanation, analysis of that?
If you are collecting more, if you are earning more salaries, if you are spending more, you'll be paying more taxes. But if you are earning less, in terms of income taxes, you will not be paying as much as someone that is earning more. You get it? That's what the tax law is have come to bridge. One of the good things that have come to bridge. That's why the promoters and the people behind it were saying that it won't affect ordinary people because they are not the one earning millions. They are not the one earning hundreds of millions. They are just few thousand they're earning. So they're not going to be paying much of that tax. But the other hand is that if you are consuming goods, you are consuming more goods, you'll be paying more taxes by VAT. You understand? But when you are earning your salaries, your allowances, you not pay much. in that regards. But when you are spending through consumer goods, you'll be paying through the VAT. But the VAT is still maintained at 7.5% based on the one that the Senate passage of the bill as of yesterday.
But do you believe in the school of thought by Nigerians, some Nigerians, not all, that it is the average Nigerians that pay tax more than the big men in quotes?
Hey, the reason why people will allude to that is because of the tax evasion that has been happening in the country. A lot of people have failed to remit their taxes, and the corruption you mentioned earlier is also part of it. But with this coming tax law that is coming, there is a tax police that is also behind it, in the sense that if you don't pay your tax, they'll go after you, they'll get their money from you. But what the allusion is trying to point out is that the big men, the political class, have a way of shortchanging the system. Even though they put the laws there, they also have a way of shortchanging the system. And that's why tax evasion is one of those threats to tax collection in Nigeria as of today.
All right. It's been, we're talking about the state of the nation, and we're talking about some policies that have actually affected the economy of the nation on the desk tonight. Let's go on a quick break. After this break, we'll return and we will bring you more discussion on the desk. Stay with us. Welcome back on the desk. It is still the desk on Global Television, reaching you live and direct from the nation's capital, Abuja, Nigeria. We're looking at the state of the nation and, of course, policies that have affected the economy of the nation. How did we get to where we are today? Who is paying tax and who is not paying? Who is contributing to the growth of the economy and who is not? Now, we all know that one of the major source of income for Nigeria is the crude. All right? A lot of people were so happy having Dangote refinery, of course, and that it will boost the economy of the nation. But right now, I have my guest right here, a political economist. Adefolarin Olamilekan is right here in the studio, and I'm going to be asking him right away, Adefolarin, now the price of crude. We all know what has affected the price of crude at the international market as it is right now. Okay, the price drop, and looking at the situation of this price, and we're looking at the 2025 budget, putting all of this together, what do you think is going to be the fate of the 2025 budget and the impact of this drop in price on the economy of the nation?
Definitely, it may have a very drastic impact on the economy. But as the federal government said about a week ago, they alleged the fear of a crude oil price that is declining. As of today, the crude oil price, WTI, is $61. Brent crude is $63. Meanwhile, OPEC basket, the Nigerian Agbani crude oil as well as the Bonny Light belongs to, is now $62. And yesterday it was about $59. 2 days back it was $58. Then when this fear of dropping of crude oil price came, a lot of people show concern that it may affect the Nigerian 2025 budget, because the budget benchmark for the crude oil is $75. Get it? And the total revenue expectation from the crude oil, according to the government, is about 19 trillion naira, based on the 1.6, 1.7 million barrels they think they can produce daily. But in the last 2 months, we discovered that there has been a problem even with the production of the 1.6, 1.8 million barrels, even though the target of the budget was 2.06 million barrels per day. But they have been able to manage between 1.5 to 1.6 million barrels per day, which also means drastically the production cannot even meet up with the target of the budget. So with the crude oil price now dropping, it now brought a challenge to the federal government. So they have to begin to look at elsewhere. Although the government of President Tinubu in the first year has been able to revolutionize non-oil sector, and that's why you see that the non-oil sector, they are believing that they can get about 34 trillion naira from the non-oil sector. Custom alone is expected to bring about 10 trillion naira or thereabout. FRS also is bringing about 12 trillion and thereabout. Then other independent sources of revenue is also coming. So altogether, they're looking at about 54 trillion naira in revenue coming to support the budget at this point in time. But with the crude oil price that is falling, it's a shake on it. So that's why they are thinking of other ways. Although borrowing is also there. They have about 15 trillion debt services they need to meet up. And they also have about 18 trillion borrowings and they need to make. So what the government is just trying to do, they don't want to go beyond the threshold of their 15 to 18 trillion borrowing. Because if the crude oil price continues to drop, it will definitely affect it. And they may also go for external borrowing, which will increase the borrowing spree. And the government wants to avoid that. But hopefully, we are all hopeful that the crude oil price will go up. But on the other hand, if crude oil price go up, it has its own challenge on the poor mass. I know you would definitely want to ask a question on that. If the crude oil price goes up, it will have a challenge on the domestic price of PMS. And that's why you see that recently Dangote have been doing its matchmaking marketing by bringing down its price as a result of the dropping in the crude oil price on the global market.
But I'm actually going to ask, because we're talking about the reduction in price right now, and you actually talked about diversification. All right. Now, let's look at the sectors in Nigeria. Which of the sectors in Nigeria do you think has more potential of growing the economy of this nation? We could remember in 2024, the telco, okay, and the financial sector give the economy just a little boost, just like 2% or so. Now, I don't know, 2 or 20% or thereabout, as the case may be. I can't really place the percentage. But then, as it is right now, which sector do you think has the potential to boost the growth of the economy of this nation?
For me, all these sectors, we have about key 7 sectors, then we have 24 sub-sectors, then we have about 38 sub-sectors. It's 7 key sectors: oil and gas, banking and finance, agriculture, mining, ICT, then we have entertainment also joined, then we also have aviation and the rest of them, transportation and the rest of them. But all these sectors are good to boost Nigerian economy. But the key out of all of them is that oil and gas have been the king in boosting Nigerian economy. ICT has followed. In the first quarter of 2025, we have witnessed a very high increase, import of economic improvement in Nigeria, particularly as the ICT still dominates that particular arena, bringing a lot of juicy, when I mean juice, I mean a lot of improvement in Nigerian economy. ICT has been top. Agric also is also doing very well. The mining recently also added some impetus. Even though we have not gotten to the level that we want, mining is still contributing about 3%, although the government target is about 7 to 10%. But ICT, oil and gas have been dominating and they have been contributing a lot to the economy. But going forward in saying we want to diversify our economy, agriculture remains the best option to diversify the economy because agriculture has several layers of subsection. Just take fish. I was discussing with one economist recently, and he made an analogy about fish economy. And he said there are several things that can come out of fish economy in Nigeria if we diversify. That's just one aspect of agriculture. Then you talk about cattle rearing economy. That's just one. Leather and the rest of them will come out of it. Then crop farming. So agriculture is still the best. It's still the best in terms of economic diversification that can bring better improvement on the economy, but just that we have not yet tapped into that as expected. Like in China, for instance, one of the things that boosted the economy is agriculture. Because from agriculture, they're able to get several products and followed by mining. You get it? Then mining, agriculture boost other sectors like ICT and because all the byproducts that you use in engaging in producing several other things that you can talk of comes from mining, comes from agriculture. As we're sitting in this hall right now, agricultural products are here. From the seat to the tables to the mic that is on our clothes comes from all those sectors. So, but because we have not yet diversified our economy and strategically look at the point of diversification, not just looking at it from the political angle, which we have always used. And that's why when President Buhari was around, he did economic diversification. The concentration was agriculture, but they didn't take it strongly in a way that it would have helped the economy beyond the political arrangement that it followed.
While we're talking, while we're talking about agriculture, the first thing that came to my mind is, hey, is it not in Nigeria? Is it not aware that Nigerians can't go to farm anymore because of herders and farmers clashes? Well, it's so good that you narrowed it down to fish farming. We also have poultry and all of that. But how many people, all right, the peasant farmers, they can't do that diversification. Even if we want to go into farming, how many mechanized people, mechanized farmers do we have? So now what do you think the federal government should do to encourage this farming? And of course, you talked about cattle. The moment you mention cattle rearing, the first thing that will come to mind is, this analyst is talking about herders, the same people that have constituted nuisance to Nigerians, as it has been alleged, the people he's talking about here, that their activities can boost the economy of the nation. So how can we marry all of this?
Let me take it from the last one, the cattle rearing economy. It's because we have not been able to tap into the beauty, the goodness of that set of economy. We have always looked at it from the angle of the challenges that it brought into the economy of Nigeria, into the Nigerian space and the rest of them. But look at other climes and see how they have been able to manage that. And again, although it has been said over time that the culture of those set of people who are into that kind of business need to be changed. They need to modernize their economic business in a way that modern way has been suggested, ranching and the rest of them. Those are the ways. Although the government is trying, that's why they set up a ministry, livestock ministry for that kind of sector. And we just hope that all the policy initiative of that sector will not just become political and become a document for references, but it will become practical. So cattle rearing economy is quite good. It could help the economy, it could help Nigeria, but we must demystify it. Cattle economy is not a bad idea. It's because we have made it bad, and that's why we are seeing it as bad. But in a other development client, it's a business as expected. You build ranches, you put your cow there, you feed them, and you become a multi-million business that you manage. On the other hand, you also mentioned security is very important. You talk about household farmers. We have about 40.2 million household farmers in Nigeria, according to Nigerian Bureau of Statistics figure. You get it? So those 40.2 million household farmers, for now, more than half of them cannot go to a farm because of the issue of insecurity. But government is doing everything possible to bring security to those areas. And I don't also want us to generalize this insecurity that farmers don't go to farm. Farmers are going to farm in Abuja, but not as people are painting it. People don't go to. People still go to farm in the southern part of the country, in the western part of the country. But even in the north, that we have this crisis of elders farmers, people still go to farm. But the only challenge is that because we have not managed information around that aspect of the economy, and that's why we are seeing it as something that is very, very threatening. Although threatening in a way, but not as we are pushing it. But government policy to correct some of those menace is out there. We just need to support them and ensure that we have security for our farmers and people can go to our farm and produce food for us to consume.
Well, this is the desk. On the desk, we unveil facts and, of course, we dissect and, of course, so many topical issues. Now we're talking about the nation, the state of the nation, and, of course, the policies, all right, that have affected the growth of the economy, as a matter of fact. Now, the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has been traveling, and not just him, and some of his officials also have been traveling. And this is in a bid to woo investors. There was a time that the president said, well, he's traveling to woo investors to some foreign countries. Now, what do we do to get these people come to invest, looking at the current economic situation, and of what benefit is their investment? Because a lot of people will tell you the expatriates are being given more attention or more diplomatic treatment than the Nigerian people who are doing businesses in Nigeria, because they make the environment more conducive for people like that, and all sort of thinkings. Now, how do we get investors to invest in this country to boost the economy? And they are coming around.
I think
you think it's good?
The investors have been coming around. Although we have two types of investors. We have FPI, foreign portfolio investors. They are trooping into our stock market. When I checked our stock market today, it was a bullish outing. You get it, a very bullish outing for the stock market. I think throughout this week we have had a bullish outing on the stock market. So foreign investors are trooping to our stock market. They call them the FPI, that means foreign portfolio investors. Then we have the FDI, foreign direct investors. So it is those ones that most of us are very scared of. Those are the ones that you talk about the expatriate quota issue with them. When they come in, they invest their money, they build factory, they build here and there. So they bring in their people to still come and work the work that some Nigerians can do for them. So those ones are there. I think just this week, I think when the president was easy, the president that went to Brazil recently, or the vice president that went, and they asked some MOU they signed about building milk factory in Nigeria. I think the guys are back and they have put their pen or paper and things are rolling in that regard. But the challenge that we have is that those investments, when they come and build their factory, I don't know, they run it for some couple of years. After some time, they go. Reason being that the structural deficit in our economy cannot accommodate some of those investments. And what are those structural deficits? The issue of insecurity is still there. The issue of light, power, electricity is key to investment, having a field day to be able to settle down and do business in Nigeria. You know why the FPI are quite popular? They can put their money in the stock, and within the twinkling of an eye, they can withdraw their money and go. Those ones don't have issue. They can buy foreign exchange. They can buy treasury paper from CBN. They can buy debt paper, promissory note from debt management office. They can collect their money within the twinkling of an eye and go. But the one that will stay, that will generate employment, they need structural. We need to address our structural deficit problem. Light, electricity, good road, water, security is key to those set of businessmen to stay. And when those structural are not there, they will not stay. Like this one that the president and the Brazil government signed now. If at the end of the Brazil government discover that, or the Brazil investor discover that we don't have enough electricity to generate or to give them to power their businesses, it will become a challenge.
All right. I think I was almost trying to ask if structural development can also bring economic development. So how now, this problem that you've mentioned, is this something that can be surmounted? And do you think structural development can bring economic development?
That's the key. If you have structural development, what are those structural development? Power is number one on the list. Power, electricity is number one. Number two is good road network. We know we have good road network, about 70,000 kilometers or more that we have in Nigeria. More than 70,000 kilometers network that we have in Nigeria. But how durable are those roads is the question we normally ask. Anytime someone says, we have over 150,000 kilometers of road, but how durable, how sustainable are those roads? That's the question that falls. Then we also need security is also part of structural development that will bring good economy. Because investors want to be assured that their life is protected, apart from their money is protected. Although Nigerians have been able to enjoy what we call, a very serene political stability in the last 25 years. So investors are not worried about our political stability, but what they are worried about is our security. Terrorism, banditry, kidnapping, the year of those one, ritual killing, the year of those one, the elders, farmers crisis, the year of those one. Then road network. But key among those top lists, when you do a checklist of structural deficit in Nigeria, on top is power, electricity. Because it's lacking. And that's what industry needs.
But then, apart from government, does individuals have anything to do or any right to contribute to the development of the economy in any way?
They do.
Because you look at the youths, you talked about ICT. We have a lot of Nigerians who are ICT compliant. We have some women who are enterprising. Do you think there is anything the government can do to support them so that they, on their own part, can also contribute to the growth of the economy? Because sometimes what we're looking at right now is the fact that some of this growth are minimal and they don't transcend, or maybe flow down to the average Nigerians, and that's where the problem is. So is it possible to get development, economic development, growth from individual Nigerians apart from people in governance?
I think the individual you want have been doing their bit. We also have CRS, corporate social responsibility, also coming in. But there is a limit to what most of those individuals can do. And most times when those individuals come into the ecosystem, the environment, to begin to provide such, we begin to tag them, okay, he's looking for political appointment, he's seeking for political vote and the rest of them. That's what normally comes. But a lot of Nigerians have been providing that, but they are limited in numbers. To provide electricity, for instance, individuals cannot say, okay, they want to build a mini grid. They have to come together to put money together, get license from Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, then get all the infrastructure, maybe import some of those items and get this electricity provided for the people. But they are limited. But the major bulk of the work still rests on government. Even government normally support businesses, give credit facilities to Bank of Industry, Bank of Agriculture, NISA or CBN and the rest of them. But most of those monies are still limited. And sometimes citizens collect that money, and when you ask them, you collected money from government, you put it in business, they say some people regard it as their own national cake. But I discovered that recently, people who collected COVID-19 loan from CBN are started paying. That's why you see some people are complaining that banks are deducting their money. Banks are not deducting your money for nothing. You provided BVN. So if you collected COVID-19 money, the money will be deducted to the last kobo until you pay. And that's what the government is doing. That is the system that is put in place. So no more free lunch in Freetown anymore in Nigeria when it comes to collecting government money. But that money is not yet enough per se to support those businesses. But for me, I'm not even in the good book of saying government give people money. Government by itself should create that enabling environment for people to do business and also competitively participate in those businesses.
Okay.
There are about 64 government-owned enterprises in Nigeria. I mean, initially in 1990s, we have about 600 companies owned by federal government of Nigeria. Because of monetization and the regulation and the rest of them that came into Nigeria economy through the IMF World Bank conditionality, those companies were nullified, some of them were sold out and the rest of them. So we have about 64 of them. Now, those 64 are just chasing after taxes. But there is a mandate for those 64 companies to be providing services and products for Nigeria. They are not doing it. So if a government that is serious wants to really create employment, create a competitive economy for the people, those 64 enterprises are supposed to be providing services and products. Produce. Ajakuta is lying fallow there. It's a government-owned enterprise. Why is it lying fallow? Nobody is thinking of what to do about it. Even when they think about it, the political inclination comes into it and it spoils the issue. So for me, it's not just government supporting people to be giving them money to be one. Government create that business. What stopped Nigerian government from owning a water factory? Everybody drink pure water everywhere. What stopped a local government from having a water factory? Or a state government from, we drink water, we drink soft drink, we do, but government is shy away from doing all this. And in development climate, for instance, in China, every businesses that government start, even though it's a private owned, they ensure that they own about 25 to 30% share in those businesses. So what's happening to Nigeria? Why can't we try the same thing? But we copy different things, but when it comes to the one that will really benefit Nigerian people, ordinary Nigerians, we stay away from it.
All right, let's look at your prediction as a political economist. What's your prediction for Nigeria's economic growth? And what are the factors that you feel can actually grease and make this growth smooth and seamless? And what do you think on the other part could be a means or a source of stagnation for the growth of the economy, putting your prediction into perspective?
I think one thing we must first know, although we had different layers of political economies, a critical political economy, so we don't to put too much attention on growth. Growth is numbers. You pay attention to development. Development deals with the question of how many people have been taken out of poverty. How many people have gone to school? How many classrooms have you built? How many, and not just the numbers of those classes, how many people have attended classes in those classrooms? How many teachers were procured or employed to teach in those schools? So political economists like myself deal with development issues. We deal with development indexes, not growth indexes. In growth indexes, we tell you, we have built one road, and we have built two this. It's just the numbers. But how far does that number translate into the core aspect of development? And that's where political economy comes and says, no, not just the number. How far has that number translated in life of people? So first and foremost, if Nigerian economy, in the projection, you say I should do prediction. Now, first and foremost, what is the government policy about poverty eradication in Nigeria? There are only just three cardinal ways federal government since 1999. That is the modest history of Nigeria economy, or a modest history of economic history of Nigeria that we can relate with since 1999. The three cardinal ways government have been trying to reduce poverty in Nigeria is to give people money, is to buy keke for people, is to buy motorcycle for people. Does that reduce poverty? No. Rather, teach them how to reduce poverty by themselves. All the 724 local governments, no, there's none of them that is lacking in resources that can be mined, apart from agriculture that they farm, that the government can help the people to get involved in. In China, for instance, they create communal companies that engage in productivities. And that's not to reduce poverty. But in Nigeria, we give people money. We buy keke for them, we buy a motorcycle for them, we give them sewing machine, we give them a grinding machine, and you say you are doing poverty reduction. It won't work. They are not sustainable. Poverty reduction has to be organic through productivity. And for Nigerian, if we talk about prediction, I should make. If I want to make prediction, I will make prediction on something that is empty because the foundation to make that prediction is lacking. And that's why I'm suggesting that if we want to really reduce poverty, we must do it organic in a way that we don't need to be giving people money anymore. Although they will tell you, economists, pure Keynesian and the rest of the economists will tell you that it is just for a short time so that the people can have a succor. That succor will become, that's why the succor has become something that people want every day. Give us money, dash us money, buy us keke, buy us motorcycle, buy us grinding machine, which is not the right way to reduce poverty. I earlier pointed that there are about 600 companies. Do you know that we have different factories that federal government established in the 60s, in the 70s, under first development plan, second development plan, even the rolling plan of the late 90s were there. But where are those factories? Aluminum plant, rolling plant, and the rest of them. Where are they? Those are the ways that when you rejuvenate those factories, people will go and work, they'll get paid with sustainable income, and poverty will be reduced than just dashing them some cosmetic 20,000, 50,000. And that has become so political.
All right, that has become so political, and as a matter of fact. So right now, what would be your final word? As a matter of fact, our time is up right now. But then, what do you think the government should do to redeem the current situation before we call it a close?
I think the federal government has promised a lot for Nigerians. They promised CNG buses that will be running in some states, although we also understand they gave money to some state governors to go and buy some of them, use the money to do something. But the key bulk still lies this way. I don't want us to just focus on federal government alone. State government is also responsible for the economy. What are they doing apart from federal government? I know federal government is trying, and that's why I say when federal government do some policy, it is majorly the civil service at the federal government level that benefit. The way that what that was just being, that will be repaid to some civil servant now. How many Nigerians are part of the civil servant? So we must look at that. But for me, I think they should just ensure that the promises that promise Nigeria, they should fulfill it. And what are those promises? Give them light, give them good roads, and give them, means of education for human capital development. All this put together will take people out of poverty without them looking back and say, government, thank you.
All right, that is the voice of Adefolari Olamileko on the decks this evening. And as a matter of fact, this is how far the time is going to take us on the desk. But then, give us capital and human development, structural development. Let it be what we can see and not just on the papers, because the figures doesn't translate to the average Nigerian in any way. What the average Nigerian will want to hear as far as the positive impact of these policies that has led to any form of development is when they can actually go to the market and come back smiling, when they can move from one location to the other. There are so many things that we can do to develop the economy of this nation. But the bottom line is we need to know who is doing what and who is supervising whatever anyone is doing to contribute to the growth of the economy of Nigeria as a nation. Many thanks for joining us this evening, Olamileko Adefolari.
Thanks for having me.
And all our viewers out there, very big thank you for being part of The Desk. The Desk will come on your way again for the next edition. My name is Ramsey Enoch Agbo. Bye-bye for now.